So if you're not us and you don't have to review the movies for a podcast and you're thinking, should I go see, Spider-Verse again or go watch The Flash? Go watch the Spider-Verse movie again.
Right.
All right, welcome to Only Comics. This is episode 8. Adrian, how we doing, dude?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Happy Father's Day.
Same to you, bro.
Thank you.
Yep, here we are recording on the Father's Day. We got a handful of things to discuss this week. I think it's going to be a fun show. We have, our new segment, Newsflash Buddy, that's coming up. And I think we'll start with a spoiler-free, I guess, kind of like, you just dip your toe in the water real quick, just
Right.
for people, that may have not seen The Flash yet. We saw it this weekend.
Right.
We are going to do our deep dive. And boy, was this interesting movie, to say the least.
Yes, it was.
So, I was running a little late this morning. I kind of felt like The Flash on my way here. I was going like 90 to get here. Like when I text you and said I'm 15 minutes away, I was really like 20 minutes away. But hey,
Got you.
Did I make it here in 15?
For the lawyers out there, allegedly doing 90.
Allegedly, yeah. True, good point. So we'll kind of do I guess we'll dip our toe in real quick and we'll give our scores. We'll kind of give a spoiler-free overview. Then we'll dig into Newsflash. Then we'll get this thing moving. So I think I'll start with my score. Adrian, I took my oldest son with me, and we saw it. And the minute it was over, he looks at me. He goes, "That was cringy."
Wow.
And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "It was mid." And I'm like, "That's a good way to explain it because I'm gonna give it a 5.5."
I agree. I was more optimistic last week when I gave my prediction. I think I gave it maybe a 6 something or a 7 something.
Yep.
I'll do a mid only because it had some highs. Well, it had some mids.
Yeah.
It definitely had a lot of lows.
Yes.
So I'll give it like a 4.5 or 5 today.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I mean, for me, was an enjoyable movie at times. Like, I'm not disappointed that I saw it, but I'm in no rush to see it again. We saw Spider-Man, a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I can't wait to get back to see this one again. And I do not have that feeling leaving this one.
The only thing I can say about, well, not the only thing I can say about this movie, the one thing I can say is I'm not as disappointed in this movie as I was in Black Panther 2.
Okay.
Only because I kind of figured this movie would kind of be mid.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I knew it was going to suck, but I knew it was going to kind of be mid, so I really didn't have any expectations for it.
Yeah.
But I predicted that it was going to be a little higher only because of the other elements that were in it. The not Jack. I was going to say Jack Nicholson, but
Surprised he wasn't.
Right, exactly. Because of all the other cameos that appeared in the show. So, it didn't suck. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm glad I saw it. But I would not have, if in hindsight, I wouldn't have rushed to seeing this show other than, to review it here.
Yeah, I would say for the spoiler-free part, the good, the bad, the ugly for me is like the good. Unfortunately, the best parts of the movie were not the Flash, in my opinion. It was the Batman stuff. Like I really enjoyed, the Batcave as much as. Now, I will say, if you've been watching our show, a lot of our predictions, came true. A lot of the things that we were scared about came true. Like I went into this with a Michael Keaton bias. And I did feel seeing, just like I said in the trailer, and this is stuff we've seen already with him being this acrobatic, Batman who's taking out 3-4 people. He's fighting General Zod. Like at 71 years old, it was distracting to me. That was one of the but I think the Batman presence, like I think Ben Affleck did a great job in the small limited role he had there. We got to see him as Batman and Bruce Wayne. That was cool. And the bad for me, man, this movie, I feel like it was all over the place. I feel like a lot of the humor didn't hit. The ugly for me is a lot of the CGI was so inconsistent. There were times where I'm like, you know, I won't. We'll get into it in a little bit, but there were things I'm like, it's so distracting because of how bad it looked at times. A lot of even just the running scenes just didn't. It didn't look like the Flash that we've seen in the Justice League and whatnot. So to me, CGI was hit or miss all over the place, and the movie was just there was a lot going on, but I feel like this, as much as they try to make the stakes really big, I don't feel like I got that. It didn't hit.
Well, for me, the thing that stood out, the overarching thing that stood out was, did the same writer write Spider-Man?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
we're trying to make this spoiler free at this point,
Yeah.
but we'll do a deep dive later. But it's almost like the same writer wrote both movies,
Yeah.
because there were so many elements toward the end,
Yep.
in this Flash movie that was so similar to
Yeah.
Spidey and Multiverse.
Absolutely. So, well, I said 5.5. What was your score?
I'm gonna go with a 4.5 or a 5.
All right. So 4.5, 5.5 in that range. That's our little toe dip. We'll do the deep dive after these next segments. A lot going on in comic news. This week as it has been, which is a great thing. One of the big things that we saw was Marvel just delayed a bunch of movies.
Right.
They delayed, 6 MCU movies have been delayed. Avengers 5 and 6, Fantastic Four, and a bunch more. One movie was moved up. That was interesting.
Yeah, that was Deadpool.
Deadpool 3, yeah.
Yep. I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. So Deadpool 3, November 8th, 24 was the original release date. Now it's moved up to May 3rd, 24. So, I mean, we're talking less than a year away now. So that's exciting. We have Captain America, Brave New World. We talked about this last week. They changed the name.
Right.
This movie was going to be released May 3rd of 24. Now it's pushed back to July.
Yep.
I mean, I'm excited about Deadpool moving up, as you just said you were. Captain America, did you even care about this movie yet?
No. Quite frankly, no.
Yeah.
Since Steve Rogers died, retired, whatever he did, no.
Yeah, same. I like Anthony Mackie. I think he was great in the Falcon character. I do. The show, for me, it was kind of just, it was okay.
Well, for me, it's not about Anthony Mackie. It's about the fact that they're trying to hybridize these two superheroes.
Yeah.
Just separate them now. That way, there's a cool break. I like the fact that in the Falcon TV Disney show, they had him kind of grow into something. I like that they had this interim Captain America, which turned out to be a horrible person.
Oh yeah, U.S. agent. Yeah.
So but just move on to the next person.
Right.
Do a reboot or whatever you want to call it, and just bring a different Captain America in its own, because that's not something that you share.
Yeah.
It's like the Flash movie. You don't share, the Batman with anybody.
Right.
You don't share Captain America with anybody.
Yeah. Speaking of the U.S. agent, I think it's John Walker. Maybe I'm maybe messing that up, but the guy you're talking,
Psycho, whatever his name was.
Yeah, the dude that freaking he killed a guy with the Captain America shield. Yeah. So the movie Thunderbolts is, I guess it's like I've never read any Thunderbolt comics.
Nor have I. Nope.
No, so this is the first time I'm even hearing about them. What it sounds like is Marvel's version of Suicide Squad.
Right.
A lot of villains, anti-heroes, like this dude you're talking, U.S. agent's going to be part of the team. Bucky's going to be part of the team. And the chick putting all this together is something Fontaine.
The CIA.
Yes. Yep. And this movie originally was going to drop July 26th of 24. It's been pushed back to December 20th of 24. And I think same feelings for me on this. I don't really care yet.
Right. I mean, I'm glad they kind of doing this. They kind of spacing things out. They're kind of taking their time. And I think a lot of this pushback is also from stuff that's happening in real life.
Yeah.
The politicking of, the certain actors. They trying to figure out what's going to happen with them. So it makes sense, and I'm good with it.
Yeah, me too. And, I mean, there's also this big Writers Guild of America strike that's been ongoing, so that's part of it too. But I do agree, because there's some, we'll get to these at the end, there's some that have been pushed back even further, and I think it's because of the reason you're talking.
Right.
Blade, September 6th of 24 was the original date. Now it's February 14th of 25. I've actually never seen a Blade movie, not even the originals with Wesley Snipes.
I've seen all of them, and he did a very Wesley Snipes. He owned that character.
Got it.
He owned, so it's going to be kind of hard to replace him.
Yeah.
I'm obviously, well, with the trend now, they'll probably bring back ancient Wesley, to play Blade. I mean, I doubt it, but it's going to be kind of hard to replace because he's like one of those, the current Captain America, they own these things.
Yeah,
Robert Downey Jr. with the Iron Man.
Yep.
It's going to be kind of hard to replace him, I think.
Yeah. So that's moved back a few months. Fantastic Four, which you're a big fan. You're a big fan of Fantastic Four stuff in general.
Yep.
And we've talked about this here. We don't think they've ever really done this right. They've done it decent at times, but never really nailed Fantastic Four yet in live action. Movie was originally going to drop February 14th of 25, and now it's been pushed back to May 2nd of 25. This one, I wish they didn't push it back. Like this, so far, except for, actually, out of all the ones been pushed back, this is probably the one I'm most upset about so far.
Right. Fantastic Four, I would prefer them to take a little bit more time, find the right actors and actresses to portray these characters, do it properly, and make sure that they have a good story, because there's no reason why they can't have as good of a story as the Spider-Man, as the Avengers, as the original Black Panther, the Captain Americas. There's no reason whatsoever why they can't take their time, find the right people to portray these characters, and put out a good story.
Now, do you think the first few Fantastic Four movies, was the story the worst part? Was it the actors, in your opinion?
I think the first two, a couple of the characters were a decent fit.
Yeah.
Mr. Fantastic and his wife, I think they were a good fit. Even Dr. Doom, the guy from Nip Tuck, playing Dr. Doom, I even think that he did a good job. I think the storyline with the first two was just not in sync with the characters and or the actors.
I got you.
Right? And the third one with
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan as the Human Torch. That was just wrong. That was just wrong altogether. Nothing fit in that properly. The actors, the storyline, none of that.
Yep. So now we get to the two movies that I think are delayed for both reasons. One, because all these other movies were delayed just a few months.
Right.
Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, originally May 2nd, 25. This thing's been pushed back almost a full year, May 1st, 26. Mm-hmm. And then Avengers: Secret Wars, May 1st, was originally going to drop May 1st, 26. This has been pushed back to May 7th, 27, so a year and a week almost. And this is, to your point, the Jonathan Majors issue. We talked about it a few weeks ago, but, now that more time has passed, I do think this is an issue internally, and I think they're trying to figure out a solution. I don't think they want to move forward with them.
Well, I consider myself the baseline of news, and I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of quiet in my camp. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's something been put out about it, but I really haven't heard anything. So you're probably right. They're probably trying to pivot and see how they can move him out of this position. And
here's why I say that. I also read this week that there's a show on Disney Plus on the Marvel section called Assembled. It's where it's almost like a behind-the-scenes making of a movie, and they put it out with every movie. The one movie they haven't put it out for yet? The one where Jonathan Majors is the co-star, Ant-Man and Quantumania. It was supposed to drop at some point, and they canceled it. Mm-hmm. So that's got me thinking, wait a minute, they're canceling that. They couldn't cancel Quantumania. It was it was too big, right? Mm-hmm. But if they're canceling that, the only reason that they would be canceling that is the Jonathan Majors thing.
Right.
Because they've had movies that did not do well, they had movies that did great, and they always put that piece out. So the fact that that's not coming out, I think that there's more to the story than and a lot of times when there's no news, there's stuff going on in the back, and we just haven't heard about it yet.
Absolutely. But we'll see. I mean, it still makes you kind of think, why is the district attorney in New York, even though there's no charges from the female, why are they pursuing this thing? Why are they dropping him? And even though they finished The Flash like a year or so ago with Ezra Miller, they still promoted the hell out of that. They still pushed that out, regardless of what they're gonna do with Ezra Miller in the background.
True.
So it's curious, but I'm not really. Well, I won't say what I was thinking.
Only comics.
Only comics.
But I feel like this is a blessing in disguise, because forget about the Jonathan Majors stuff. I don't know if anyone is really, really bought in to what the MCU, what they're doing right now.
I agree.
It's not exciting.
Right.
You know, so it's like if it's going to your point, if it takes them they take some additional time to get these movies, better off, maybe adjust the story a little bit. I mean, maybe they pivot from Kang. Because here's the other thing. Kang was not supposed to be the focus of this phase. It's the Jonathan Majors effect. He did such a good job in Loki, and the early footage from Quantumanium went over so well with Marvel execs. Then they said, shit, let's base this around him, which they probably shouldn't have. Obviously they can't predict the future, but in hindsight, they're probably like, damn, we should have went with plan A instead of switching to plan B.
Right. I mean, you're right. I mean, now's the time if they want to put Jonathan Majors to sleep. Put him to sleep.
Yeah.
There's so much content in the comics. There's so many other supervillains.
Right.
There's so many other characters that they can bring out. And I'm all about, bringing in more sleeper characters from the comics, because you can't always have Captain America in the front, Iron Man in the front, all these big names out in front. Sure, bring out the other people, but bring out people that make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if Kang wasn't in the original thing, the Jonathan Major effect had them rethink it. Well, guess what? This happened, so let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many villains. I mean, if they're talking Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, he's a big enough villain to be that Thanos, Kang size to interact with every different, movie, show, and all these different heroes.
This dude goes around picking fights with all these dudes, Thanos, and I mean, he does not. He's absolutely psychotic, so he can definitely hold his own.
Yeah, I mean, there's him, there's Galactus. I mean, there's so many others. I mean, if you go on the X-Men side, there's Apocalypse. If he could be done right now, X-Men are down the field. I mean, there's so many different options. So it's like I hope they do take this time. And it actually, if you remember back to the original Infinity Saga, Infinity War and Endgame that was not the original titles. They were supposed to come out earlier. It was going to be Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2, and they adjusted some plans there too. So it's probably not a bad, and that turned out amazing. Right. So it's probably not a bad thing.
Right.
All right, next up, Spider-Man 4, Tom Holland. He released some details about a meeting he had with Amy Pascal and a few things that they discussed. One of them was the whole Miles Morales thing. We talked about last week, Miles Morales, a live-action Miles Morales movie was discussed and planned for the future. And, it's always interesting with that character because in the comics, just like the first Spider-Man movie or the first Spider-Verse movie, Miles becomes Spider-Man after the Peter Parker in that universe dies. And in the comics, they didn't have any interaction because Peter was already dead. Right. Spider-Verse is where they started introducing these alternate universes where the two meet. In the Spider-Man game for PlayStation, they just already are in the same universe. So, I think so people's thoughts moving into this when you heard the news, like, is it going to be Peter and Miles together or is it going to be Miles on a separate story? But what Marvel is saying to Tom is that they want to keep them separate on screen. Right. How do you feel about that?
I agree. And some thoughts behind that is, well, so there's so much content that Spider-Man, they're still just scratching the surface of the Spider-Man story, number one. Yep. If they stop rebooting his storyline and just move on with all the villains and the subject matters that they can present to the public, they'll have a much broader, much stronger Spider-Man. He can definitely stand on his own. Yeah. Miles Morales Spider-Man, different universe. He is just beginning. So he has so much development and so many things that he can do. And the fact that he pops around all these different multiverses opens him up to even more adventures. So I do think that these are two Spider-Mans that need to develop on their own. Yeah. Now, the backstory, my backstory, meaning I think that those two cannot, meaning Tom Holland and the Miles Morales live action would properly exist in the same movie because there would be so much tension. I think everybody was taken by surprise by the Miles Morales Spider-Man that it would probably overshadow the Tom, the live action Spider-Man, the Peter Parker Spider-Man. So I don't think that they should come together for that purpose alone, but the majority of the thing is that they have so many storylines behind each one of them. They can definitely stay separated for some time to come.
And your point was like her exact quote almost. The quote was, "They're completely separate worlds. You never know. I would never say no to anything.
Right.
But we have a lot of movies to make about Miles and a lot of movies to make about Peter. I'm a movie producer. I want to keep going with this franchise with Tom."
Right.
Which makes sense.
Sure.
And I agree. I don't think they should cross, not to the level where like, Batman and the Flash where they're working together for movies or whatnot.
Right.
I think in these big, if they introduce some Miles in time, which I don't think this will happen, but say they introduce Miles next year, live action, we get to the Secret Wars movie where it's all this multiverse war. If they cross path there,
Sure,
that'd be cool. I'm okay with that.
Sure, kind of like what they did in the last Spider-Man.
Yeah,
something brief.
Right.
Everybody understands what's going on, and then they separate again and go do that. Not have some Avenger type of Spider-Man group. That would be ridiculous.
Because they're almost too similar. Like Peter and Miles are very different, but when they're Spider-Man, they're so similar.
Right.
And it's like even in the Into the Spider-Verse or the Spider-Verse movies, the Peter Parker that we see, I almost said Peter Barker because Peter B. Parker.
All right.
But we said this last week jokingly. He's an idiot.
Right.
They make him a dumbass so that he doesn't overshadow Miles because, we were talking about this, if this world or New York City's in all this danger and Miles can't handle it, well, this Peter Parker's been Peter for 20 years. He should just be able to come in and save the day.
Right.
But they make him half an idiot so that they can, he's like the Forrest Gump of the Spider-Verse.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm with it. I don't think that those two should mesh in a movie. I agree. They have a whole nother. And the other thing is the Tom Holland Spider-Man is influenced by the Miles Morales comic a little bit. Think about the character Ned. He's based off of Genki in the comics, who is Miles' like guy in the chair, his roommate from the Spider-Verse movies.
Yep.
But in the comics, he plays a role very much like Ned. So, Ned was never in a Peter Parker story.
Right.
He never had a friend like that,
Nope.
So I think they're way too similar. The other thing, news flash, buddy, we have DCU, the new Batman movie. Now, this was described as the Batman Brave and the Bold. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be about an older Batman with an entire Bat family already established, and I guess we're going to see Damian Wayne for the first time on screen and see that dynamic. So I'm intrigued by this. My only issue is I wish they would finish the Batman series first with Robert Pattinson because having like 7 Batmans on screen at the same time is going to be a little confusing. Right. And it's also going to dilute the importance of Batman, in my opinion. But the news is the director of The Flash, Andy Muschietti, I guess is the name, is directing the new Batman movie.
Mistake.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about this one. And I won't say much because there's some spoilers that we'll get into that has me even more nervous about this one. But yeah, I don't. Based off of this one movie, now it's hard maybe to judge a director off of one movie because everyone has great movies, shitty movies. But what I've seen so far, I'm not a fan of it. I hope it's not the same writers though. So I guess it's probably better that it's a director, right? I hope it's not the same writers.
Well, and you're right. I shouldn't say mistake that this guy, even though he's thrown himself. And, he's trying to be like a Stan Lee and starting to throw himself in these movies, with the hot dog scene and things like that in The Flash. Yeah. But so I'm not going to say, bad idea because we've really only seen one thing that this guy can do. And you're right. It might be other writers that's involved.
Yeah.
And again, politically, we don't know what these directors deal with, on the back end. So they could be up against some things that we're not aware of. But to me, that's kind of a double-edged sword because if they're up against something political that's preventing them from doing the things that they do, then they should stick to the storyline more and start introducing this one-off stuff that makes no sense.
Yeah.
In these movies.
Absolutely. Other news: Venom 3. So there's some news about Venom 3. The release date is October 24th now, and they're not giving us a day. That's when it's coming out. And we've discussed the Venom movies. I was not a huge fan of them. I was expecting a lot more. And that was one, we always talk about on this show. There's a lot of times where Marvel or DC, but more Marvel will take a story from the comic, a character from the comic, and change them for the screen.
Right.
A lot of times it's done very well. Like the Civil War storyline is much better on screen. As great of a story it is on the comics, it's much better on screen, in my opinion. The Infinity Saga, I mean, the Infinity Gauntlet comic is not my favorite comic. I was not a huge fan of that, but the Infinity War movies, amazing. One of my favorite. So Venom, they did the opposite. They took a character who was badass in the comics and made him a joke on screen, in my opinion.
Right. I've heard about Venom, Carnage, all these symbiotes, whatever, in the Spider-Man thing. I've never been a fan of them. And the Venom movies, I think I've seen one, maybe one and a half of them.
Yeah, same.
I'm not really interested in what happens with this Venom, the Venom character or the movie. But I do agree from what I did see, they made him into like a clown.
Yeah,
on the screen, and that's just not right.
It's kind of like the same Black Adam mistake. Venom's supposed to be a villain.
Right.
Venom's supposed to be Spider-Man's villain.
Right.
It would be like, and again, I know they made the one Joker film without Batman, but it'd be like them making a Joker franchise, make Joker the good guy, and never mention Batman.
Right.
It'd be weird.
Yes, weird. So with this one, I'm probably on. Well, I'm thinking about Venom the way I thought about the last Ant-Man. Even though I saw the first two, they were entertaining.
Yeah.
But I still have not seen the third Ant-Man, and it's just one of those things where, okay, I know it exists, not really interested in it, and I'm not really interested enough to now pick up and start following this character.
Now, if these movies were tied to Spider-Man more, I would probably be more excited about them.
Because it makes sense. That's how they were born.
Right.
They wouldn't exist without Spider-Man.
Absolutely. Now, there was a post-credit scene, and I don't remember exactly what movie it was. Maybe it was at the end of No Way Home, where we get to see Venom looking at Spider-Man on the screen, like wanting to go to New York, and then because he gets transferred into that universe through the Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, one of these multiverse spells they put on or whatnot. But then he gets transferred back out.
Right.
But there was a piece of the symbiote that remained in that universe. So I'm wondering if, down the road, will we ever see that show up again in the Spider-Man movie? Hopefully. But it's almost like they tease that connection, but it doesn't seem like they're going that way in the near future. So I wish they would, because I'm not a huge fan. I think the first movie was okay, and the second one I honestly couldn't get through. As much as I love Wesley Snipes, same thing with Carnage. Carnage in the comics is a freaking savage.
Right.
And we got this just like funny kind of Metro type, like enigmatic, like just I'm like it's not who this guy is.
Right.
Carnage is a beast, dude.
Right. Make the villain the villain.
Yeah.
Make the superhero the superhero. Don't do this crossover. It's just like if the actors can't play the role, then they're obviously the wrong person.
Yeah.
Don't come in demanding that you're going to make this character into your version of. No, that's not the way it works.
Right. Yep. I hear you. Deadpool 3. There was a rumor by a trusted source. I love how on social media there's these handful of accounts that leak these rumors. No one knows who they are, and it's always like trusted source. And 99% of the time, they could turn out to be true. So is it studio leaking stuff? Is it people working on the project? Is it intentional? I think it's intentional.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's usually somebody inside the studio because, these nuggets that they drop, they make too much sense in order for you and me to know. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. We're not looking into the future and like, oh, this is going to happen. So we don't have that insider information.
Yeah.
So definitely the studio, but they have to do that in order to keep their franchise alive.
Right. I think it's like testing the waters. Let me put out this leak and see what everyone says about it and see if we're on the right track. It's like we're asking for your survey before we put out the movie.
Right. Right.
It's like they're taking our order. They want to know what you want to eat.
Right. I wish they would have did that with Ezra Miller character though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's some decisions that y'all, why don't you just run them by us?
Right.
DC, Marvel, do us a favor. Before you start doing stupid shit, run your decisions by us.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Jesus. But Deadpool 3, the rumor that came out from this trusted source was that it's shaping up to be the No Way Home of the Fox X-Men movies.
Right.
Which I'm like, if that is the case, now here's the other thing sometimes with these rumors. Sometimes the hype, y'all are full of shit. You say stuff that ain't true. You say stuff like, this was the best movie since Endgame. And you're like, no, dude, this is not the best movie since anything. This is actually the worst movie that y'all have come out with in the past 2 years.
So what just happened with The Flash? That was supposed to be the best of the best of the best.
it was supposed to be DC's No Way Home. It's like, no, that was DC's Just Go Home. No, it was not DC's No Way Home. But if Deadpool 3 is a No Way Home, now we obviously, we know Marvel can do that multiversal film. They did it with No Way Home. So, like, you know, Marvel's 1-0 on the multiverse, you know, connected on these past universes. DC's 0 for 1.
Right.
I think Marvel's going to go 2-0 with this Deadpool 3. And I'm excited about seeing these past X-Men, because there's more history there. With the Spider-Man movies, we're talking 2 other Spider-Men, and we're talking 5 movies.
Right.
With the X-Men, I mean, we ranked them a few weeks ago. What was there, 12, 13 movies? You're talking dozens of characters, like different, you know, from different time periods. There's the First Class X-Men. There's the future ones. Like, there's so much more they can do with this. And supposedly they're pulling a lot of these actors from those movies, which I think can be amazing. And then you get the Deadpool factor. Them interacting with Deadpool is going to be, it's going to be a rated R movie. It's going to be off the wall. It's going to be funny. So I'm looking forward to this movie probably more than anything else that Marvel's putting out.
I'm wondering if there's this whole multiverse thing just so the studios can shake things up.
Yeah.
Because once after all of these, like you'll find at the end of Flash, you know, characters coming out of the woodwork that you didn't know about. Yeah. So I think it's almost like they're using this multiverse platform to mix things up, so then they can pull out whatever they want. Yeah. You know, their like bag of tricks. Exactly. You know, a big reset. So multiverse is the new reboot.
Yeah. I actually think you're right, and and now they're gonna play it out over what, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? But if you think about it, they're gonna Marvel and Disney, Marvel, they're gonna want these movies to continue forever, just like the comics, right? The benefit the comics have is you could just draw people. It don't matter. There's no actor that dies and you can't cast them anymore. Here you got about maybe 10 years with an actor. Right. You know, it's like pretty soon Tom Holland's going to be like 40 years old. Right. And we're not going to believe that he's in college.
Right. Well, not only is he going to be 40 years old, but he's going to get tired too.
He is, yeah. You know? Absolutely. So I think, to your point, I do think that's where this will end. I think whatever, Secret Wars, Kang Dynasty, wherever we end up, I think will be a major reset, and they'll be able to replace these roles with an easy explanation. Right. It's just Iron Man from another dimension. It's just Logan from this universe.
Exactly.
You know, versus why are you recasting Robert Downey Jr.? Like, because he's like 60. Right. What they should have done with Michael Keaton.
Which they should have done with the Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Michael Keaton. I like Michael Keaton. So I'm excited about the Deadpool. I hope it is that you know, that No Way Home of the X-Men movies. But now this is the point where if you've not seen The Flash, stop the video, go watch it, or don't. But if you care about spoilers, do not proceed, because we're gonna spoil the fuck out of this movie. Right. And man, this thing, I think right from the beginning, I got some like, I was 5.5. You said 4.5? Yeah.
I'll 4.5. I'll say 5.
5. Okay. 5.5. That's where we're at. We described this movie as mid. Right. But even right off the bat, dude, it was off the rails a little bit. Like I didn't even like the way the main title came in and then stopped, like when he was getting ready to run. Like, it was just like, now you're trying to be Deadpool? You're trying to have this fourth wall break? From the minute he started running, just the way that whole scene looked, it looked so fake.
So since when does the Flash have to prep himself to run? I mean, he could have been at his destination in the time that it took him to profile the start of his run. Ridiculous.
Oh, since you asked, I can answer that. You know, since when? Since DC wanted to make a cool little title scene and they needed a reason to slow him down. That's since when.
That was stupid. That was stupid. I mean, it just got worse from there. Yep. The whole baby catching scene. Oh my God. The CGI was horrible. I mean, this was like some 1980s CGI stuff.
It was bad. Oh yeah, the fake babies.
We'll work our way through it.
Yeah. So it starts off. I mean, pretty much, Barry gets a call from Alfred. He's on his way to work, I think. Right.
He's late already. He's late for whatever reason.
Yep. He's late. And he's in the same coffee shop. The girl he knows isn't there. So like that part, I was like, okay, this is is fun.
Sure,
So it's nice little jokes here. The guy's, oblivious to him being late, and he don't give a shit. So it's a nice little opening scene.
Right.
He gets called by Alfred, so I'm like, oh, we're hopping right into this. I do like that about these. I feel like the more recent superhero movies, it's like they don't need to do so much building anymore. They can hop right into the story.
Right.
There's a lot of times, like, dude, I watched The Amazing Spider-Man, the first one, recently again. And it's like, dude, I think like a half hour, 45 minutes go by before we ever see Spider-Man on screen.
Right.
Like, we're past that. I do enjoy that.
Yes, yes.
Just
get to the point. We all know why we came here.
Absolutely. So he gets a call from Alfred, and basically he's being called in because Superman's busy, Wonder Woman's busy. So everyone else that he wanted to call wasn't around. So Flash reluctantly shows up.
Right.
So we kind of get to see this, like, Barry's a little tired of being the Flash, right? Like, he's trying to balance his life. To your point, very similar to Spider-Man No Way Home, right? He's trying to balance being Spider-Man and being Peter Parker.
Right.
And then we get to the scene where they go to Gotham General. The hospital's, like, all falling apart. And these horrible, horrible-looking CGI babies start falling out of this top floor.
Right.
And he's saving them.
Well, it's CGI everything.
Yes.
Ezra Miller's likeness is imprinted on this moving red suit. And it's just, first of all, just step back. So he ends up, first of all, he needs a watch to tell him that he's hungry, right?
Yep.
So he breaks into, before he stops, so he's got time to stop. And that's the ridiculousness of this scene. He has time to stop, check his watch, right?
Yep.
Which compared to him is extremely slow. He breaks into a candy machine. Now, if he was so late before, right, why didn't he just steal the freaking sandwich?
Right.
Just steal the shit.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and wait for some guy that you don't know to take his time to make your sandwich. Just steal it and revamp yourself and then go out and do your stuff. But the CGI just, it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah. Yeah, the fallen baby. Oh god, remember like the Kung Fu Baby from the '90s. Like, everybody's Kung Fu fighting,
right?
And it was like this real shitty video. A lot of everyone had on like their computers,
right?
It reminded me of that.
And then we had the scene with the microwave. So I just had a flashback to the Spider-Man with the pregnant Spider-Woman.
Yeah,
I mean, really, of all the things,
right? Yeah,
I mean,
we're talking child endangerment.
Shoot the bedpan, catch the baby in the bedpan, and use the microwave to catch the acid.
Right.
Don't put the baby in the microwave.
Yeah, that was more child endangerment. Now I guess DC was trying to top Marvel with the pregnant Spider-Woman, right?
There you go.
But I mean, basically, he saves the day, right? And then he does see Bruce. Now Gal Gadot shows up as Wonder Woman, which was, I didn't expect that. Did you?
I did not. Also, I may have fallen asleep because you said that Ben Affleck showed up as Bruce Wayne and not Batman, right? Yeah. So the Batman, when we first see Ben Affleck in the suit, that was CGI.
Yeah.
His face was CGI. Then when Gal Gadot showed up, I think that was CGI because he looked just weird, just morphed out. And then I haven't seen him after that. So I don't even think he showed a real life appearance in the whole movie.
Sure, that's funny. But yeah, no, so they save the day. Gal shows up, kind of saves Bruce at the last minute. There was a funny scene where she has the lasso on Bruce, and he's like, my ego's too big for me to thank you. And I was like, I just thought like, wow, Bruce is being a complete dick right now. And I didn't realize he still had the lasso on him. And then Flash says a thing about, I know sex exists, I just never had it. Yeah. Like that was like there was some humor that hit.
Right. The humor, I think they did well. It wasn't an overabundance of humor. So they kind of balanced that properly.
Yeah.
But outside of that,
and then, Barry ends up going to his family's house, right? Mm-hmm. Where, and I do, so good things. One of the things I did like about this movie was how we got to see the Flash's origin in a very different way, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is a character, this is actually part of my biggest issue I have with the DCU is that they just rushed the Justice League. Like, we didn't get to see any of these characters become these characters or even really know why they're even, in this universe, they just get all mashed together in Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to see, and people watching maybe go, you're talking about both ends because y'all also say you don't want to see origin stories all the time. I don't, but this was a very creative way to do it, where we got to see some of the stuff through flashbacks. I guess I prefer that than the whole, let's start watching Barry from the time he was born till he grew up, and then, the last 20 minutes of the film he becomes Flash. I prefer the way they did it in this.
There was like a flashback. At first I didn't understand because I guess he's having a memory of his childhood, and they played out his memory on the screen, which I thought was cool. Yeah. I just didn't realize that his mother was Spanish. So
yeah, that was interesting because first of all, Ezra Miller as a person is not Hispanic.
Nope.
He's actually I don't know. I looked it up the other day, I forget, but he's like German and something else. Right. And Ezra Miller, or the character Flash, I don't think was Hispanic in the comics.
Nope.
And they just made like, it's almost like I like it. It's cool, but like, shouldn't the actor also be Hispanic who has the Hispanic mother? I'm just saying.
Right. I mean, you got the father, German, Irish, whatever, the Spanish mother, and looks like an Asian son, Barry. Yeah. So that kind of didn't jive with me. Yeah. But then after
like typical Hollywood though, right?
Right. And then after the visit, it was like a disconnect. He starts running. And that running, and I understand the running because he was angry about it, but for just that brief moment, it just seems to be a disconnect as to why he started running.
Yes, yeah. You weren't 100%. You weren't sure that, or you didn't know he was that hurt and in his feelings like that. And so I think one of my biggest critiques is a lot of this stuff was rushed because they wanted to do so much in so little time.
Right.
Like, so they had to just they need to introduce the speed force like this and that whole that bowl or whatnot. I forget what it's called, but the thing that he's in where he travels the multiverse. But basically he, through this emotional run he goes on, he learns that he can go back in time even further than he's done in the past because he's already done this in the Justice League movie. But he went back like a few seconds, if you remember. Right. At the end with the what was it, Steppenwolf or whoever it was, he went back a few seconds. They they fought him again, beat him or whatnot. But he's never gone back more than just a few seconds or a minute or two. Here he realizes he ends up going back, and now he's seeing all these things that happened like over the past day. He sees, unfortunately, we see the CGI babies again. They just had an excuse to throw Kung Fu Baby out there again. But through this, he starts thinking about, what if I would to go back and basically save my mom? Because now we learn his real origin in the movie. His mom was killed. We never see who killed his mom. His dad gets blamed for it because of just timing wise. Right. His dad's in the store getting tomatoes, but his head's down, so the camera never really sees him. And then Barry is working. I don't know if he's an attorney or paralegal, or he works for a law firm. And part of what they're doing is trying to free his dad or whatnot, but they don't have enough evidence.
Right.
And his initial thought is, I'm going to go back and prevent my mom's death.
Right.
Talks to Bruce about this. Bruce is not a fan.
Right.
I love Bruce Wayne's car was badass, by the way. I don't know if it was a Mercedes or whatnot, but
it's a Mercedes.
Yeah, that thing was nice.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about the portrayal of Bruce Wayne, the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne in this movie?
Like I said, all I saw was CGI. So to me, there was no portrayal at all. It was a cameo appearance. They really made him look extremely strange on the bridge. I mean, when they did the side shot, his whole jawline was out, and it just looked weird. So
you're talking just the Batman. So
just the Batman. Yeah. Well, Ben Affleck. Like I said, I must have, because this movie was so atrocious in the very beginning. I guess I nodded off or something. It was just not interesting at all.
Got it. Oh, so you don't even really remember when he showed up with the Mercedes and talking to him?
No.
Okay, got it. Oh, so he dozed off a little bit.
Hey, third generation comics.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's why your rating was lower, because one of the better parts of the movie was the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne, and you missed it. So I think sleeping in that part may have affected your score.
Dude, don't make me think that I have to go back and watch this movie again.
Wait till it comes out, wherever it comes out. You do not need to go back to see it. But Bruce does play, or I'm sorry, Ben does play a very good Bruce Wayne. But he basically says, like, this is not a good idea. You go back in time, you'll screw everything up, yada yada yada. Barry decides to just like go back anyways, and he does, and he's going back in time, and while he's doing this, there's somebody else in this this little bowl or whatever he's in. There's someone else in there that kind of knocks him off the ball. You see that part?
Yep.
And then he ends up in a universe, and now I learned by looking up, it's 2013 he goes back to. And he shows up at his house, walks in. It kind of reminded me of the Miles Morales scene where he came in at the end of the movie and his mom's like, oh, I like, you cut your braids, you cut your hair. Like, kind of same thing. They say that to this version of Barry. Dad makes some comment saying he looks a lot older.
Right.
He's sitting down at the table and his mom is alive. Now, actually, I think I'm screwing this up because he did go back at some point and he did prevent the death.
Yes.
And he prevented that. He basically went back to the time when he forgot the can of tomatoes.
Where she forgot the can of tomatoes, so he put the can of tomatoes in the cart.
Yeah.
Which prevented her from having to go back to try to get it.
Yes. And then on his way back, that's when he got knocked off of this bowl and fell into 2013.
Right.
And now he's realizing, oh, I saved my mom. She's alive. He's having this emotional moment. And then he notices another Barry.
Right.
Who, I think it's a trend with these movies, dude. It started in Guardians of the Galaxy where he's like, oh, you got a moron? I got one too.
Right.
We had an idiot in Spider-Verse. We just had another freaking idiot in The Flash. The 2013 version of Flash is the idiot.
Right.
He's the dumbass.
This is why I said earlier, it's almost like the same writer wrote Flash and Spider-Man Across the Multiverse. It's like, because, first of all, the mother is Spanish in both.
Yep.
Right. He comes back. There's a visit where he goes back and see his mother. She just recognizes him as being different. So there's that scene.
Yep.
And that's not the only scene in this movie, which we'll get to later, that's so similar, which is just creepy.
Right. Absolutely. So he kind of runs off. He's like, I got to go. Actually, he goes, shit. And they're like, what? He's like, oh, I got to take a shit. And he runs off. And he runs into the other Barry outside.
Right.
They all freak out. And then, they kind of move forward a little bit and basically explains to him what's going on. But he doesn't explain to him that their mom died.
Right.
He leaves that part out.
Right.
Because he probably figures, well, this Barry has had the mother the whole time. I'm not trying to screw that up for him.
Right. Besides, he was an absolute idiot, and he probably would have just shut down.
Right. So I actually liked their interactions that time. It's like, imagine dealing with a past version of yourself when you were more immature.
Right.
You probably would annoy the shit out of yourself.
Absolutely. But when it comes to the interaction in the room, there was like that 1980s moment when they, like Michael Keaton, he played this character where he had to split himself.
Oh, Multiplicity.
Multiplicity.
Yeah.
It was one of those kind of, it was like a 1980-ish kind of feel to it. It's like they should be able to do that better.
Yeah.
But it looked like they took him, recorded him, took him on the floor, recorded him, and it put it together facing each other.
Yeah.
It didn't look like two people normally interacting.
Right.
So they did it wasn't even CGI. The CGI was just bad.
Yeah.
But this interaction, it wasn't smooth and it wasn't convincing to me.
Right. And, he finds out that this world's a lot different. And then, but through him being there, General Zod shows up.
Right.
And he also realizes the date, and he goes, this is the date that I got my powers. Now, this version of Barry, the reason why, the original Barry got his powers is he was an intern somewhere,
right.
And he was working basically that night, got struck by lightning, a bunch of chemicals fell on him, he became Flash. Well, this Barry is not working where he's working. He's not interning where he's interning. He actually was going out on a date with the girl Iris,
right?
The one who showed up, the news reporter in the beginning of the movie, who the older Flash couldn't build up the courage to talk to. Right. I thought that was interesting too. That's something that I don't think we see a lot when they do these time travel movies. It's like the Barry from 2013 had his mom there. He had a different upbringing. He didn't have a lot of the same social issues that the other Barry had because he was already going out with girls.
Right.
And the other dude was like graduated from college, still a virgin.
Right.
So I like that they included that attention to detail.
Yeah, it's like the little things that shape you as an individual, as a person, throughout your life, Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. I like that point.
So General Zod shows up, and this is another. So I think another one of my biggest issues with this movie is the fact that I don't feel like there was a real villain. General Zod did not have much of a presence in this movie.
Nope.
He was very sidelined. It's almost like he was like off, in the distance, and we're just kind of watching him, and you never really see any major scenes with him.
Right.
We don't now. I've not seen Man of Steel. I've not made it through that movie. I fell asleep every time. And it's like if you don't really know the Superman lore, the General Zod is just like some asshole in the air. Like who gives a shit?
Well, I mean, I think they didn't give him enough time because one, it wasn't really about him.
Right.
It's about an event that shaped Barry because Barry, he was there when it happened.
Right.
In his fledgling, he was just learning how to use his powers.
Yep.
But also, they probably paid that actor a couple of dollars because again, there was a superimposition.
Yeah.
They superimposed his face over the mask, which you could really tell.
Right.
He wasn't really there.
Yeah.
Acting.
Right.
And the fact that they kept the mask on made it easier for them to do that. So he was just there was a character building moment for the Flash as opposed to him being really a supervillain.
And I think that's where the movie was lacking because he, outside of the crisis he's dealing with internally, there was no real threat for him to fight, which is like every movie has some type of villain, Right. And I think they did it so much better in Spider-Man No Way Home. Mm-hmm. Like they brought in the Norman Osborn from Tobey Maguire's universe, but he became like a badass, villain in this. He was even more sick and sadistic than he was in the first couple.
Right.
So there was a threat of the multiverse being all screwed up. There was a threat of everyone knowing he's Peter Parker, and then there was the threat of these villains being in this universe as well. And this just seemed like the stakes didn't really match, the level they were trying to build it up to.
Right. I think in this movie, the villain was time.
Yeah.
And they did a poor job of making you feel that the villain was time.
Right.
Because, they wanted to promote Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that was interesting. So in this world in 2013, Barry realizes that there's no Justice League.
Right.
There's no Superman. There's no Wonder Woman. No one knows what they're talking about. He ends up, back at the other Barry.
Cyborg.
No Cyborg. They're looking him up. He's still playing football. But there is a Batman.
Right.
And he's at the other Barry's apartment, and he's got all these kind of like, college buddies, stoners sleeping on the couch, like just everyone's hanging out. And they're kind of like, dude, who are you talking about? Superman? What's that? And then they say, oh, yeah, the Batman's here.
Right. The girl says, I'm the Batman.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Again, some of the humor that hit, right?
Right.
Because
I actually like that whole college room scene.
that was cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it also means that Batman is so badass. He exists anywhere.
Right.
Right? All these other characters, forget all these other characters.
True.
All these other, titans of the comic book world. But Batman,
Yeah.
he's there.
As he should. So, Barry has this idea of tracking him down. And again, I forget if this happened before or after the other Barry got his powers, but in this, he realizes what day it is.
Right.
And he goes, this day I got my powers. And he wants to help this Barry get his powers because they're like, shit, we're going to need him, right? We're trying to fight General Zod.
Mm-hmm.
So he breaks into the lab where he got his powers, sets him up to get struck by lightning. This dude's not really excited about being struck by lightning. They both get hit, and the main Flash loses his power. Young Flash now has power,
Right.
but he doesn't really know how to use it yet.
Well, let's stop there for a moment. So this is one of those ridiculous moments. This is the opposite ridiculousness of the let me get started to run scene.
Yep.
Flash is supposed to be, his mind moves so quick. He can move so quick. And you actually, when they start fighting Zod and all his minions and stuff, Barry said, well, we're faster than them.
Yeah.
I think that's like a jab at, because the Flash and the Superman has always been, who's the fastest.
Yep.
I think that was a jab.
Absolutely.
But so the Flash is so fast, he should have, one, heard the lightning, even as it comes through the window, and been able to move. But of course, if he would have moved, then he wouldn't have lost his powers, and the storyline would have been something else.
Right.
But this is where they make things kind of wrong, where they spend so much time showing him to getting ready to run, but then he's not fast enough to move away out of the line of lightning.
Yeah, I thought that was stupid. I don't think they needed him to lose his power. That was such a weak side plot because, like, obviously he's going to get his powers back.
Right.
And in the way they did it with, we'll get into it with the Bruce Wayne stuff. The Supergirl comes back and brings him up and it was just unnecessary. Like they could have used that time to devote some more time to General Zod to show us why he's such a threat, maybe to show some more to what you're talking about, why the time is such the villain of the movie. Like they could have used that time elsewhere, and I think that was a waste of time in the film. Nothing about that makes sense. If this is what the accident that gave Flash his powers, why would it take the powers from the Flash who already has it and give it to the other one? And why would a bolt of lightning when Flash basically fucking sends lightning everywhere when he runs?
Right. Well, but the other thing is that they had to take his powers away in order to give it back to him. And I have seen, I think there was an animation of the Flash losing his powers, and then the Batman, they're sitting outside of Bruce's house. Yeah. And Bruce set up something like that so the Flash can get his powers back through a lightning bolt. It's like an alternate universe or something like that. Okay. So they actually recreated something that came either out of a comic or out of an animation. So that made sense for that to happen. Yeah. But how it happened and should it have happened, that's kind of weird.
Nope, I don't like it. Not a fan. Nope. I'm gonna give thumbs down. Should have removed that. He shouldn't have lost his powers. That was stupid. But
just for them to get it, both have it anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, just let him keep his powers, and then you develop on from there.
Right. And you were joking about maybe it's the same writer, but I think another thing I have issues with is when these like comic hero tropes that we have to see, right? Like you have to see the hero lose his power at some point and get it back. We saw it with Spider-Man in the Tobey Maguire movies. I mean, Iron Man had issues with the suit and little things. Thor lost his power, couldn't use his hammer.
Bruce couldn't get it up, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep. Couldn't go. You just need to green pills. I don't know. Can we get Bruce, man? But yeah, I hate that they have to do those same notes, and it's like, and that's how I just felt forced to me. Yeah. So anyways, he loses the power. Now the phasing, is this something new? Is that a Flash power from the like I've never seen him phase through a wall.
Yeah, he does it.
He does. Okay.
Yeah, he does that all the time. All kinds of stuff.
And I'm not a Flash expert, so.
And also, he has to do that in order to move a certain way, or to he just can't. He doesn't have to run around everything. Yeah. Just think about it. If
he can't pull an A train.
Exactly. And if he goes from just say a straight line around the world, yes, he can go around a mountain, but why?
Right. I got you. So they end up, they find out Batman exists, and they end up going to Batman's house, Bruce's house. For some reason, Bruce's gates open, and his front door is wide open.
Right. Basically, a condemned mansion.
Right. But my man's living there still. So why in the world would Bruce Wayne, of all people, have his front gate wide open and his front door unlocked while he's home in his flip-flops hanging out?
Well, when I first saw this Michael Keaton version of Batman in the trailers, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? But the way they pulled this off, this is actually one of the things that kind of made me start paying attention to this movie.
Yeah.
That the reason that I didn't give it a 3 score. It actually made sense the way they pulled this off to me.
Yeah.
Gotham, he said, became a better city. They didn't need him anymore.
Right.
So, and Batman is Batman in his head, and Bruce Wayne is the suit.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So he just became this hermit.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff actually made sense to me, and I love the way. Okay, love is a strong word for this movie. Yeah. So, but I love the way they pulled off this version of Bruce Wayne, because it just made him, the Michael Keaton version of Bruce Wayne, make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good introduction. I we have 2 Flash characters. They could have just faced through the fence. Let's not it's like sometimes they overdo it, in my opinion. I don't care how safe Gotham is. No billionaire is going to leave his gate and his front door open.
Yeah, but it's also like when they went to get his powers, right? They phased through the sliding glass door, and when they got to the other side, it sensed them and it just opened up.
Yeah.
It's just, little comic thing, but whatever.
Yeah. I guess when a movie is mid, I'm going to try to critique more than I should, maybe. But, I thought the scene was all right with, Bruce, long hair. He's like this recluse. He's fighting in flip-flops. He still kind of holds his own a little bit against these guys. And this is where the younger Flash starts to learn how to use some of his powers, you know, in fighting. Like he ain't really refined with it yet, but he's moving out the way. And in fact, Bruce trying to attack him, I think with the broom, he slides out of the way. Bruce falls, and that's kind of what stops this fight.
Right.
And then he explains everything to Bruce. Now we don't. Somehow this Bruce Wayne is an expert on the multiverse already.
Well, Bruce Wayne is a brainiac anyway, just like he said, you know, the older Flash said, you know, you're the greatest detective in the world, blah, 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 blah. So obviously, you know, him being super smart, trained, he's not like a Tony Stark or you know, Reed Richards.
Right.
But he's trained himself to be, you know, a very intellectual. So he does know a lot of stuff. So that kind of makes sense.
So he's laying it out, and he uses the spaghetti, which I thought was a pretty good example.
I like that. I actually like that.
Because a lot of times when we see this, you know, it's someone who has powers. They just start throwing shit in the air, and you see timelines. And you know, I think about when they first introduced the Infinity Stones in one of the Guardians movie, and the Collector like just throws them up in the air, and you see them. Like this is more like we're in someone's kitchen. So I like kind of how grounded at times this Batman was.
Right, like low tech.
Yeah, like even with the flip phone, he's like, he's gonna hack this with the flip phone, and then the other Flash is like, I just tried every combination.
Right.
So he kind of shows the example with the spaghetti, which this then explains a lot of things we see later in the film, because he has the uncooked spaghetti, which is in a straight line. He's saying this is how, you know, time, you know, people think that it works, and then he like snaps them. And he's like, and then when this happens, then he drops the plate of like cooked spaghetti, and it's all, you know, swiggling all around.
No, he says a lot of people think when the two pieces of spaghetti, and we talking about spaghetti, the two uncooked pieces of spaghetti are together, he bends one of them. He thinks that people think that all time starts at the same place, and ends up differently. He's like, no, that's not the way it works. It creates a fulcrum. So then he takes the two pieces of spaghetti and he makes a cross out of them.
Yeah.
So not only do you change the end, but you also change the beginning.
Change the beginning, which was why, because this Bruce was a lot older. So that's what he couldn't understand. He's like, how did I go back in time to 2013? So he went back about 10 years.
Right.
And
you're older.
The Bruce Wayne is like in his 70s versus the Bruce Wayne he's used to is like 45, 50 maybe. Right. You know, and to your he explained it with the spaghetti, and then when he dropped the plate of cooked spaghetti, he started talking about how there's some of these kind of junctures that are inevitable,
right?
And it goes to the whole canon event of the multiverse movie, the Spider-Verse movie, right?
The same writer
again, so same writer. Maybe they use like a pseudonym for, you know, Marvel. Right. It's like one guy with two names, maybe.
Hey, there you go.
But they kind of explain all that, and basically they're trying to recruit Bruce, and he just flat out tells them no.
Yep. And walks upstairs, you know, flip flops in hand or whatever.
Leaves him in the house.
Just bye. See ya.
Yeah. So I do kind of like, he's just like this older guy. Like he's been through. He just really don't give a shit anymore about anything.
Right.
And then they break into the Batcave. Now this is like, to your point, like one of my favorite parts about this film was just the Batman. I think the Batcave looked amazing.
Yep.
It looked like a lot of the Batcaves that we've seen illustrated in the comics.
Right.
I think the only thing it was missing was like the big penny and the T-Rex.
Right. I mean, some comics, they make these Batcaves so over the top. But this is a guy, he found a hole in his backyard and he put some tech in it. Yeah. And he put just enough stuff. And I love the fact that he had the Batarang suspended.
Yeah.
And then they brought it down.
Yep.
You know, so it wasn't this massive.
Oh, the plane.
Yeah, the plane.
Yep.
It wasn't this massive underground complex of toys.
Right.
You know, he just utilized what he had. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, he didn't have everything. He had about maybe 6 or 7 suits.
Yep.
He still had the OG Batmobile.
Yep.
And then he's got the Batwing, which looked very similar to the one. That's a little upgraded, but yeah, it wasn't like, 12 Batmobiles, 35 suits, 95 computer. And I love that it looked like the cave, because some of these more modern Batman movies, like even, the Dark Knight, that whole series, the Batcave was like just a room.
Right.
Like, and then they moved it to the trailer, and it was like this big white room. Like, it wasn't the Batcave.
Right.
This looked awesome. Bruce ends up kind of spying on them, and what they're doing is trying to track down Superman,
right?
Because they're saying, well, Zod's here. The only one that's going to be able to beat him is Superman,
right?
And they can't find a Superman in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Also, thought there was a funny scene where Barry calls. He's trying to find Aquaman.
Yep.
And he calls Arthur's dad or whatever.
Right.
And he's like, "You want to talk to my dog?"
Right.
Like the dog is. There's no Aquaman in this world. So they're trying to find Superman. Bruce, of course, has a back end into NASA. So they start looking up. Like, why not? Right.
Right.
They start looking up all these.
Tamura Tamura Morrison, Arthur's father.
Yes.
That's the actor that played Arthur's father in that scene.
Got it. Okay. And yeah, that was a funny scene. But they're trying to find, is there Superman somewhere? And they look up all these kind of like UFO type of sightings, through NASA's back end, and then they end up figuring out that there's they think it's Superman is being kept somewhere in like Croatia, Russia, or something like that.
Right.
And they show up, and this is Bruce is like listening in. Eventually, they recruit Bruce.
Right.
He comes down. He cuts his. I love how he's a good barber because he cut his hair like in like 4 minutes.
Exactly.
He comes out looking like Bruce Wayne.
The bad barber shop or something.
Yeah, maybe he's got some tech where it just cuts for him or something. I don't know, but he came out looking good, and he throws on the suit. So I did, and now one of the things we haven't mentioned yet, the score to this movie, the overall soundtrack, I thought it was done pretty well. I thought it was, and I like how they use like some past Superman soundtracks, and they used the Danny Elfman theme for the Batman.
I didn't notice the soundtrack, actually. It was like benign, which is cool for me because it focuses on, there was so much going on, but unlike the Miles Morales Spider-Man, there was so much going on in his latest Spider-Man, but it made sense.
Right.
That you could actually follow it without explanation. There was so much going on in this Flash movie, but it was disconnected. So you was like, wait, what? You just keep getting distracted by the scenes because they disjointed, you know. So I didn't even notice the soundtrack.
Oh, really? And they end up finding that this again, the Superman characters in Russia, they go try to save Superman or find him, and they realize it's not Superman, it's not Kal-El,
right?
It's Kara, who is Superman's cousin, right?
Yep.
Supergirl. So they still save her. Mm-hmm. They're leaving out. They get into I don't know, some fight or whatnot. They get back to Bruce's house at this point.
Yes.
And this is when Kara basically is like, she wants nothing to do with these guys.
Right. Well, to her, they're all alien.
Yes.
In her first interaction with Earthlings was that they captured her and dumped her in a hole.
Right.
So she was just
she don't trust them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think her character, was it a Sasha Calais or Callie? I think she was the most underrated character in this movie. I think I read somewhere that she was supposed to have more scenes.
Really?
But they cut them out because they was kind of like rated R. But like when she broke out, when the sun regenerated her, I mean, there was like an onslaught.
Yeah.
And they had to cut some of that stuff out.
Wow.
So even though they were cursing throughout this whole movie, they cut out because it was rated R or whatever. They cut out a lot of her scenes.
So we can't see her whip someone's ass like, real brutal, but we can see Ezra Miller basically naked walking around.
Exactly.
That's okay.
Exactly.
That's not too adult, but God forbid you bash someone's face in.
Right. But I definitely think that she was it's almost like Mary Lou Retton back in the 80s. You probably don't even know who
I don't know what you're talking
about. A gymnast. She just came out of left field because the star wasn't there.
Yeah.
And she just came out of left field and just won all these awards and stuff. I think this character, that actress, Sasha, she was the most surprising and most exciting part of this whole movie to me.
Yeah. It was a great addition. I think she played the role perfectly.
Absolutely.
And I did like how like she didn't trust these guys at first because, to your point, the first experience with these Earthlings, they freaking captured her, threw her in the dark, and she was powerless.
Right.
So she recharges, she heads off. Now she tries to fight Zod by herself. If I'm remembering this right.
Yes.
Yep. And then while this is happening, this is where they're trying to give Barry his powers back.
Correct.
And they have the the Batman kite.
So you are a undercover superhero and you're flying the now superhero banner above your house during a thunderstorm that's getting struck by lightning.
Then nobody notices.
But nobody notices. No, not at all.
Well, I mean, this same character, if you think back to the original Batman movies, you remember when the bat symbol would go up, he would have bat symbols on his house. Mm-hmm. And they would like shine in his window and shine. So like, you mean to tell me no one noticed that the bat symbols by Wayne Manor? Because he's he's Bruce Wayne.
Right.
They must know where he lives, right?
Yep.
So no one noticed these big ass bat symbols outside. So yeah, to your point, they're gonna fly the bat symbol in the air for the kite, right? or lightning rod, if you will, and basically Barry gets electrocuted again, and he doesn't get his powers back though.
Right.
He gets a little messed up with this.
Well, that's a recreation again of what happened in this either comic or the animation. I mean, this dude gets fried.
Yeah.
He's like at death's door before he actually gets his power back. So they recreated that properly.
Isn't it funny how, like, once he brought up being electrocuted, it just happened to have, like, this really, really bad thunderstorm that night?
There's that, and also once Supergirl takes him up, so forget the chemicals. I guess the chemicals are already in his body.
Yeah, they're already there. Yeah.
So all we need to do now is take him up and get him properly electrocuted.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess the lightning rod they had wasn't sufficient enough. But yeah, to your point, the chemicals remain. He just needed another jolt.
Exactly.
It's like in the movies when someone's dying, and like that last time they got and then they zap him like turn it up more, and like no, don't do it, don't. And they zap him and he magically comes back to life. Yeah, it's like that. Or if it's Fast and Furious, it's when Letty comes over and touches Dom and he wakes up. So, side note, I got a question. Fast and Furious movies.
Yep.
Should these be considered superhero movies now?
They might as well be. I haven't seen the latest one yet, but I mean, I remember one where they were getting attacked on this super bridge by a tank, and Dom, Letty was about to get hit or something, and Dom leaps over the other side and lands and grabs her and lands on top of a car and but yes,
smashes either the windshield or the hood completely in.
Right. So yes, if it's not, they're not gods, they're like demigods.
Yeah.
So this is not a superhero movie. This is like a superhero movie. So yeah, because this is getting crazy.
Dude, the way they're going, we'll just have to add them to only comics. They might as well just be comic book characters at this point.
Right.
So anyway, Supergirl comes back, and I guess this is her kind of letting them know that they should do this as a team or whatnot. She grabs Barry, and she just knows somehow she knows to just bring him up in the air and get him electrocuted.
Who
told her they were trying to get his powers back? Who did they call?
Exactly.
Did they send her a text?
Well, on her fly over there, she kind of listened to them, with her super hearing and heard the whole conversation.
Got it. That makes sense. So, and then of course this works, right?
Of course.
And now she's the hero because she helped them bring, get the powers back, whatnot. Then they go to fight Zod. Right. I'm sure I'm probably skipping some shit in between.
Well, the skip is that, she's now thinking that, this guy from her planet, she realizes that there's good and bad on each planet.
Yes.
Because she represents hope.
True.
And Zod is just evil. So she realizes that, well, maybe on this planet it's the same thing, which is why she asked, hey, you came to find Kal-El. You didn't find him, but you still saved me. Yeah. Well, because you needed to be helped. So that's when she got engaged. So.
Absolutely. Great point. I love the little Superman jab that Batman throws because he's like, his name's Superman. He's like, yeah, well, your name's Batman. He goes, yeah, but I don't call myself Batman. Super Batman, which is pretty funny.
Yep.
But it's a great point. They realize, she does realize that these guys, because she asked, like, what shit, once you didn't see Superman, why the hell did you help me? You know, and that's kind of like Flash's, like, I mean, he kind of hit that note a few times throughout the movie, right? Like, it was the right thing to do, or I had to save someone. Like, you brought up earlier, we didn't talk about it much, but when General Zod originally attacked, Flash was there.
Right.
But he saved one person.
Right.
But it was like, I had to save him, so that we get to see that throughout. Like Flash is a hero. There's no confusion there. So they go fight General Zod. And one of the better parts of this movie to me were the fighting scenes, the action. I absolutely love the way DC does their fighting scenes. We talked about it with, Black Adam. Actually, we started doing this podcast after that movie came out, but I'd even like to review that one day because
absolutely.
And we've seen it in Zack Snyder's Justice League where the way they do superhero fights reminds me of like watching The Boys. It looks like super powered individuals fighting. A lot of times with Marvel, it's just shot in like regular speed.
Right.
With DC, there's a lot of slow-mo, hyper speed, a lot of sound effects, a lot of CGI in the fighting. And this is where I think it's not that it's bad CGI in these fights, it's blurry because it's happening so fast.
Right.
And I prefer the DC style of fighting.
I agree. That's pretty much the only thing that DC does right in the movies.
Yeah. You got one DC.
Right, one. So they make you understand from the perspective of the superhero or the villain what they see
Yes.
as it's happening.
Yeah.
Marvel, they like the fast fisted thing,
Right.
like the old karate movies. Like if I can make this go fast, then that's cool.
Yep.
But DC, especially with Black Adam, his perspective as he is moving, and the things that are happening in correlation to how he's moving, I love the way they do that. So that makes you feel like you're inside that person, that superhero, that super. We'll just call them superhero, supervillain. They're supers. It makes you feel like you're there, seeing from their perspective, as opposed to a spectator looking at some blur of an event.
Now, it's a great point. I think that's a good comparison. Where Marvel, it's more like you're the average bystander watching what's happening,
right?
And to your point, DC, it's like they take you into the fight,
right?
You're getting that, because that is one. As much as some of the running scenes look cheesy, I do like that we saw the running from Flash's perspective,
right?
Because it's gonna look blurry. I mean, imagine you running. I mean, how fast? He runs what, like thousands of miles per hour? I don't know. No. He
runs millions of miles per second.
Okay, millions of miles per second.
Right.
So you ain't gonna be able to see shit.
Right.
It is blurring by. It looks like a whole blurred mess behind you.
Yeah, but to him, it's not blurry.
Right.
So Superman, and there was actually a contest, and I forget who he was in the contest with, but Flash, for some reason, they were on another planet.
Yeah.
And the contest was, if Flash could beat this individual back to Earth, then they would save Earth or something like that. I'm sure I'm messing this all up, but I do know that they were on a different planet.
We're not experts.
Exactly. But I do know that they were on a different planet, and the Earth was at stake, and the Flash had to move from where he was, that planet, to Earth before this other person. And he did that.
Yeah.
So he can not only run through, our atmosphere and solid objects, he can obviously move through space, at such a rate of speed where, I mean, everything about him is like, and he gets faster. He gets faster over time. It's just that he doesn't tap into more speed force. Because you got to think, he's not only moving fast, his mind has to calculate everything that's around him. So to him, his perspective, everything is in slow motion.
Right.
Like the baby falling out the building example.
Yeah.
He was able to stop and assess what was happening, and everything was still stuck in time. Yeah. So he's bad.
And to your point, he was able to stop, eat a bunch of food, because him moving at this pace is going to be very consuming of whatever, his calories, his energy.
Right.
So he's depleting all his energy. He was able to slow down enough to stop, bust open the damn vending machine, eat a bunch of shit, and then save the kids.
Yep.
So yeah, They end up going to fight Zod again. We're talking about the action. I thought this scene looked really cool.
Yep.
But this is also where, like, part of my issues with the older Batman, it's like we're seeing Batman as more athletic, faster, stronger than he was when he was in his 20s in the original Tim Burton movies.
Right. I think that they should have incorporated some of his tech, because there's been animations where, like, Batman is going up against Superman, right?
Yep.
And he knows he's not strong enough because he's also older.
Right.
But he also has suits of armor, kind of like an Iron Man thing that enhances his strength. That would have made more sense to me than him jumping out of a supersonic airplane, flying down, and then attacking Kryptonians.
Yep. Well, my theory on that is DC, I think their goal was to get people like my age, your age to this movie, and they figured, well, if we put the original Batman with the original suit, they'll come out, because that's nostalgia, right? You're going to want to see Michael Keaton because he's your favorite Batman.
Nope.
No, I agree. I would have been perfectly fine if, like, it'd be cool to see it once, right, when he puts it on. But then knowing, like, all right, we're going to go fight General Zod, we probably should get some additional armor, not the same suit that I've had for 35 years.
I think the mistake that these directors are making, obviously, my age group is as big an audience because that's most of what I see.
I saw a lot, in
the movies. I think they're making a mistake that we want to see these versions of the superheroes that we saw when we were growing up, and that's absolutely incorrect. We want to see a good story and have the characters that we grew up with and love portrayed by an actor or an actress that can actually make that character pop.
Right.
That's it. We don't want to. We don't necessarily, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Because I get up in the morning, my bones are hurting and shit.
Yeah.
So I know some 70-year-old dude is not popping around like that.
Yeah, this dude's like 20 years older than you, and
Right.
he's, dude, I never seen you do that here.
Exactly, and you won't.
Shit, I'm 37. I'm not doing it, you know. But yeah, I agree. I think they should have armored him up a little bit, gave him a new suit. That would have been easier to digest. So this is where, as much as I was talking about how I love the Batman, you know, inclusion of this movie, this is where the part of it I didn't like, the fact that he was just so badass. Like, my man came down like Bruce Lee and shit, was taking people out. Which I listen. Batman's my favorite character.
Yep.
But 71-year-old Batman.
Right.
Now, maybe in fairness, I'm judging the Batman based off of the age Michael Keaton is. So, yes, it's a story. Yes, maybe he's younger. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm looking at it as a 71-year-old man jumping out of an airplane, taking out people from another planet.
Well, my other thing, and just a side note on Batman, I mean, I love Batman as much as, you know, Iron Man and things like that. But with as arrogant as he is, because they mature Batman through all these you know, the comics.
Yep.
And you know, and Superman, he's gonna live thousands of years, right? So I was always curious why, you know, Bruce Wayne had access to so much money, so much tech. He's obviously very intelligent. Why didn't he figure out a way to slow his aging down or reverse his aging so he can continue being the arrogant person that he is? So I always wondered about that. Maybe DC, make that a storyline.
Yeah, listen to us. Put us in charge. Someone said on YouTube, they're like, you know, it was with the video we put out about Stephen King and James Gunn's opinion of this movie, and they're like, you know, well, what makes you think that people want your opinion? Like, because we're the ones doing the damn podcast.
And we're also paying money to see it too, so we have a right to say,
Absolutely.
you know, to our own opinion.
Yep, we paid to see the movie. We're fans. We have an opinion, and we decided to do this podcast and come in here every week. So you decided to watch the video, so obviously you care. Right. You cared enough to comment, so thanks for the view, my guy. So listen up, buddy. So they're fighting Zod, and I didn't even, and this is where I started dozing off a little bit, because I was just exhausted at this point of like all just the wackiness in this movie, you know, and just the amount of things that were being introduced. And this is even to Marvel's multiverse movies, one of my biggest issues is how much info they expect us to take in with these little bits and pieces, and they want you to accept it and understand all these new rules like that. Right. And I think we saw that in this movie, right? But they're fighting, like, I didn't even realize that when Batman flew his plane into Zod that he died. I was kind of like in and out of it there, to be honest. But remember that Batman dies. Yep. And multiple times. But that was the first time. He figured, I'll sacrifice myself. Right. Flies him into Zod. And we see Kara die as well. Multiple times. And then the first time, the younger Barry goes back in time. Right. And I can't remember if it was this time.
Actually, they both went back, because the younger version was going to be like, well, I'm going to go back in time. And the older one was like, you don't even know how to. Yeah. So he starts running. And then so they both start going, and they both create the bubble.
And on the first time, was the older Barry against it, or was he for it? I can't remember.
They both did it multiple times. Yeah. But at some point, the older Barry realized that, hey, this isn't going to change. Yeah. You know, he's stopping and he's looking in this bubble, this time bubble, which I don't like. It was almost like you're in a Ratchet and Clank universe, and you can spin the knob and select something, you know, out in space or whatever. And then you go off and run in that direction. Right. But at some point, he realized that, hey, this is, what do you call it? An inevitable point in time. Right. This is going to happen. This world is going to happen regardless of what we're going to do.
They couldn't say canon event because it was already said a few weeks ago, but since they copied the Spider-Verse story, they had to come up with something else. And it was so bad, I don't remember what the hell they called it. It was the spaghetti loop. We'll call it the spaghetti loop.
There you go.
You know, but yeah, hey, thank you, Bruce Wayne, 71-year-old Bruce Wayne, for explaining. But this is that they realize that this is one of those moments where the wet spaghetti crosses, and they cannot change it. But yeah, I think it was maybe the second or third time he started going back where older Barry's like, dude, we can't, like, stop. You're gonna screw shit up. Right. And then I think, to your point, after a few more times, then he realized, like, oh, it's just inevitable. Because I think at first he was a little hesitant about going back because you're just going to screw things up more. And even early on, the original Bruce that you didn't see when you were sleeping, he warned Barry about, when you go back in time, if you have any interaction with your past self, if you do anything, like, anything you do is going to be a ripple effect and screw things up. Right. He was completely against it. Right. So they go back. They try to save him several times, and they keep dying. And now this is where I think because of the several time resets, the death of this Batman character didn't really hit me. I don't know. Like, sometimes, like, listen, when I ain't afraid to say it, when Tony Stark died in Endgame, my eyes got a little watery. It got a little glossy. I got a little emotional, 10 years on screen with this guy. I'm a big nerd. So, but this one, it didn't hit at all, to be honest.
Well, because it happened so coincidentally.
Yeah.
It happened like over there while other stuff was happening.
Right.
I think they showed or they highlighted Kara's death more than they did Bruce Wayne's death.
Yeah.
Kara's getting stabbed here on the ground, and then Bruce Wayne is in the, his plane is flying into something, and he's dying in the background. Yeah. So it wasn't as spectacular.
Yeah. I did like the fact that this was bloody for a PG-13 movie.
I was surprised, well, first of all, with all the cursing in it.
Yep.
But then, yes, it was bloody.
Like, and this is at the point, every time they went back in time, younger Barry had like more shrapnel stabbed in his body because Zod stabbed him one time, right?
Right.
And every time he went back, he had a little bit more.
And actually, that's when I realized that who he was.
Yeah.
I realized that the guy at the beginning when he first went back in time is the one that pushed him out.
Yeah.
So that's when I got that revelation,
yep.
and it actually ended up being that case.
Yeah. Yeah. The more shrapnel you saw, these pieces, you're like, wait a minute, that's what the other dude.
Right.
And then he ends up showing up.
Right.
So now we have the three Flashes kind of fighting in this multiverse
time bubble,
I don't know. Yeah, this time bubble. They're fighting, and basically younger Flash sacrifices himself. Now they learn that older Flash is
the younger Flash.
Yeah, is a younger Flash, but was created, I guess, because of what Barry did.
Right.
So he's been here for a long time. And this is that whole time thing, right? It's different starting and ending.
Right.
So basically, Flash going back in time to save his mom screwed all this stuff up.
Right.
Then created the younger version of him, who then created the older version because now we learn the way time works, like spaghetti noodles bent.
Right.
So they start fighting. Now I didn't see that coming. The younger Flash sacrificed himself. I thought they were just going to defeat the older guy like every other movie. So that was interesting. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that they're the same character, basically the Dark Flash, I think is what they're calling him in some of the reviews. So Dark Flash, this shrapnel that we keep seeing showing up, he tries to stab the original Flash with it.
Right.
Young Flash intersects it, gets stabbed, and he dies.
Right.
Now, why did he die and not heal here?
I don't know. That's actually a good question. Probably the severity of it, probably because he had been getting stabbed so many other times.
Yeah.
Probably because of who it was.
Yeah.
But that's a good question.
Yeah, I guess maybe, because of how, or maybe they also it takes a lot of their power and energy to get to this time bowl or whatever. So maybe he was depleted energy, plus how many times he got stabbed. So
and there was no vending machines out in the middle of the desert fighting Zod for him to break into to snack on.
Isn't it convenient for the CGI artists when they have these big battles and just like this endless desert that's completely flat, by the way.
Right.
And it's just endless, CGI in the back, so they don't have to, create real environments.
Right.
Very convenient. But he kills him. He sacrifices himself, and then that Flash disappears because if you kill, the younger one, the older one's not going to exist. So they kind of. It's funny how all these movies have different time rules, right? Mm-hmm. Like in Endgame, it doesn't matter. It's just a different branch. So you can kill someone back then, it ain't going to affect the other guy.
But hold on. Let's go back. So before he dies,
yeah,
and this stuff kind of resets, right? Remember, all these worlds are now colliding.
Yes,
because they're sitting there just shooting the shit.
Right.
Right. And that's when we see
all the cameos.
All the cameos again. Yep. The same writer, like in Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Miles Morales, Spider-Man. So now we got all this intersection of all of these Supermans,
right?
Which was kind of cool. And then, Nick Cage, dude. I mean, I saw that in something I was reading, and I thought it was like a joke.
Yeah.
How people they put together their own commercials and they superimpose their face over things like that. But
now, do you know why they included him?
No.
So years ago, I think in the 90s, there was a rumored.
I do know.
Okay, yeah, the rumored Superman film.
Yep.
I forget who was going to direct it. Maybe it was Tim Burton. Maybe it was people. It was some big name director, and they casted Nicolas Cage.
Right.
And there was a photo. Or some test footage with him in that same exact suit with the long hair.
Right.
that got leaked. And this is a movie that a lot of fans, now I don't fall in this boat, but a lot of fans were like, oh, I wish we would have got that Superman movie with Nicolas Cage. So this was to appease that demographic.
I like Nicolas Cage in a lot of different kinds of movies. I've watched a lot of his movies, but this is a character that he absolutely should not play.
I agree.
At all.
He should stay. I think there's a good reason why it was. And actually, you know, sidebar, we're talking about these different movies. I did like how when they went back in time and they were talking about movies like Back to the Future, a lot of the actors were changed. That was a fun little, that was some of the comedy that hit.
Again, I like that whole college dorm scene. You know, bunch of Yahoo stoners, sitting, waking up to the universe and arguing about the thing that they do know about. Right. So that was cool.
And then your point there, these worlds are clashing, and we get to see. I mean, we were joking about a Batman multiverse last week.
Right.
You said they should just bring George Clooney back, which we do see at the end.
Yep.
And then I said, well, shit, why don't they just bring Adam West back and have his little bat wheelchair digitally recreated? And they do it all the time. Now, we were joking.
Right.
And we saw Adam West running around. Now, how do you feel about, like, there's a lot of controversy right now about the Christopher Reeves inclusion, where they say this guy's dead. He cannot consent to have his likeness in the movie. Mm-hmm. And there's a pocket of fans that feel like this is too much, that DC or Marvel or any movies, they should not be recreating dead actors on screen.
Well, first of all, when you sign a contract, they have the right to use your image and likeness throughout the universe to forever.
Right.
So they can do whatever they want to do with any footage that has to do with Christopher Reeve or any other dead actor. I mean, if that was the case, why don't you just pull all the movies, off the shelf of every dead actor that died?
Right.
So that's not even an argument.
So that don't bother you at all?
Not at all.
Yeah. No, I think I mean, it's a little weird sometimes seeing them. Now, my thing is not so much, not because of those reasons. I'm just like, why? Why do we need to see this Christopher Reeve? But I get it for the older, groups that grew up on the 70s Spider-Man, or Superman.
What's interesting is that as I was reading that story, they rated every Superman.
Okay.
And of course, Brandon Roush was the worst.
Yeah.
Right. And Christopher Reeve was the best.
Okay.
Henry Cavill was number 3. And Tom Welling was number 2 from the Smallville thing, which to me, I would have loved to see a Tom Welling Superman even before Henry Cavill.
Yeah,
I would have loved to see that, but Henry Cavill did a good job.
Yeah. And we also saw a clip of him. I think one of the first times that Flash went to this whole speedball thing.
Yep.
So, anyways, worlds are collapsing. We see the Nicolas Cage, we see the Adam West, we see various versions of Superman. We see a different Supergirl. We hear Joker laughing. Like, there's so much. So this is so one scene I will rewatch it for eventually will be that one,
right?
Because I do want to pick out all little. It reminds me of like Ready Player One, when they have that big scene and there's all these characters, and every time you see it, you see new stuff.
Chucky.
Yeah, Chucky's there. Freaking Transformers are there. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, that happens. Barry dies. Older Barry dies as well. Everything kind of gets reset, and then Barry goes back to the convenience store. So his new thing is, I have to just let this happen.
Right.
He removes the can of tomatoes from his mom's cart. They have this very weird interaction where this lady's just going to hug some random kid in the store for minutes like that and not think it's weird at all. She's just a very nice lady, I guess.
I actually liked that scene. It was very moving.
Yeah.
I'm looking around to see who's crying. So I actually like that. And to me, it would have been weird if she wasn't Hispanic for some reason.
Yeah.
I think that their personality is just that they're loving like that.
Yeah.
So that scene made sense to me, and it made sense that he actually needed that.
Yeah, he definitely needed it
at that point. But because now he knows he's got to let this thing play out, because that's the only way this is going to stop.
Right. Yeah, I think it was cool in that where he got his kind of moment with his mom without knowing. But then again, it reminded me of the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, when Spider-Man or Peter is in the cafe with MJ after they don't remember him anymore.
Right.
And they almost like have a little flirtatious, minute or two.
Right.
That hit me more than this one, to be honest.
Mhm.
But I think also because we've seen this Tom Holland, of course, across many films.
Mhm.
This Ezra Miller Flash we've seen like in bits and pieces.
Right.
It doesn't hit home as much. But yeah, I don't have. I mean, it wasn't a bad scene. I like that. He now matures and realizes like I'm just gonna have to deal with this.
Right.
There's nothing I can do about it. But if you remember earlier in the film, part of the reason why his dad was still in jail was the evidence they had. They got this scrambled security
Right.
footage of him in the store. They used Bruce Wayne's tech to clean it up.
Right.
But the dad never looks up
Right.
because of where the tomatoes are on the shelf.
Right.
And he notices this when he leaves his mom. So
Right.
this scene is very impactful.
Right.
Right. To the viewers, but also to the movie, because as he's back, he's leaving, and it hits him like, oh shit. If these tomatoes were on the top shelf, he would
Right.
look up. He saw the camera, he looked up, so he ended up, I mean, we don't see when he changes them.
Right.
At some point he does, and we don't find out until they review this. He's also late for court again,
Of course.
which is fun. I mean, I guess the Barry Allen Flash in the comics is the same way. He's late to everywhere, which is kind of funny since he's like the fastest dude like in the universe. But he's late
Barry
to
Allen,
everything.
he shouldn't be late to any place as long as, he has at least a second. Now, if he realizes that he's late after the fact, yes.
Yeah.
But he shouldn't be like, well, I got to be at work in like a second.
Right.
There's no place on the planet that he can't reach in less time than that.
Yeah. But for the movie and for the humor, they have to do it, right?
I guess.
But so basically, this new piece of evidence frees Flash's dad,
Right.
Barry's dad. So he did kind of go back and change some stuff,
Right.
which is what he was trying to avoid.
Which also changed some other stuff.
Yes.
Which we'll see at the very end.
We'll see at the end. So he leaves the courtroom.
Again, like, multiverse.
Yep.
Miles goes back to the planet thinking that he went back to the original planet.
Right.
But he didn't. He went back to the planet where the spider came from.
Right.
Not where he came from.
Exactly. So we see, and we don't know what really happened here yet. We think Barry's back in the real universe he's supposed to be in, hence the dad being in jail. But one of the biggest changes, he leaves the courtroom. He gets a call. This scene kind of mimics the beginning of the movie. He gets a call from Bruce this time.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember this part, but there was a scene earlier on with the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne where him and Ezra are talking outside, and Bruce talks about being a hero and how it's lonely and yada yada yada. And Flash or Barry's like, well, we can hang out if you want, have dinner or something. And he's like, yeah, no, not right now. I'll pass. Like he's not, and it's so true to Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Bruce Wayne ain't trying to mess with nobody,
Right.
dude. He's just trying to
Right.
go fight some criminals.
Yep.
He ain't nobody's friend.
That's right.
So it's probably why you like him so much, huh?
Hey, that's it.
So he gets a call from Bruce, and it's like Bruce has a different excitement about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's happy for him. He's like, hey, I'm pulling up right now. I'll meet you. He gets out the car, and who is this Bruce Wayne, Adrian?
Yeah, I thought it would be funny for this guy to show up, but that's actually what happened.
Yeah, you predicted this.
Yeah, and the the Barry Allen character looking at him like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah.
So I thought it was a decent moment.
Yeah.
But they portrayed it like it was a comedy moment.
Yes.
As opposed to now you stepped into a world that you didn't that's not the world that you thought it was.
Right. So the Bruce that we see is George Clooney, white beard. Now George Clooney is they did this to also show us that this Bruce is older than the original Bruce that Barry's used to.
Right.
So something still changed in this, and I guess it's one of these things. And I will wrap with this. I don't know if this matters much because the whole DCEU. This is like one of the last movies of the DCEU. This is not part of the new plan that James Gunn has.
Okay.
So is this just does it matter at all? Will we see any effect of this moving forward? First of all, before I get into my prediction, what do you think?
I think, again, that they're shaking all of this stuff up so they can pull anybody from any universe and just plop them down, and it would be considered normal.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to spin a story as to why a George Clooney now is the Bruce Wayne kind of a deal. So obviously just him changing the cans, even him, just him, because remember, he let the other Barry go by. Right?
Yeah.
He saw him putting the tomatoes in his mother's basket, and then he came from around the corner and talk to his mom. So
Right.
even that interaction, if he wouldn't have pulled the can of tomatoes out, that still would have changed something.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I think they're doing it so they have the freedom to mix it up
Yeah.
any way they want to without an explanation.
All right, I'm gonna quick fire a couple questions. Will we see Ezra Miller as Flash again?
No.
Will we see George Clooney as Batman again?
No.
Will we see Ben Affleck as Batman again?
No.
No. So you're going flat no on all of them.
Yep.
I agree with all of them except for the George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why, and I hope this is not what happens because I was not a fan of George Clooney's Batman.
No.
But same director, this movie, the next Batman movie. I read somewhere that there were 3 different endings they had planned. One of them was Michael Keaton's Batman shows up at the courthouse instead of George Clooney with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Henry Cavill's Superman. That was one ending discussed.
Mm-hmm.
The second was, I think it was just Michael Keaton maybe. And then the third was the one that we saw with George Clooney.
Okay.
So if the director made this choice, and he's also the one working on the next Batman movie, we know the next Batman movie is supposed to have an older Batman with the whole Bat family established. Did he do this to create the George Clooney version of Bruce Wayne for his next Batman movie?
Now, your question was, is George Clooney going to show up as the next Batman? Now, he may show up as a Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
but it may not be, have a Batman, kind of like in Titans.
Yeah,
where there was
only Bruce.
he was only Bruce for a period of time. So that may or may not happen, but I don't think we'll see George.
But you don't
Clooney.
think he's going to be this main Batman in the next movie?
No.
God, I hope he's not. I guess the only part that makes me nervous is the same director. We're joking about the same writers. This ain't a joke. It is the same director.
Right.
So if we see George Clooney in this next movie, hey, if y'all, they send out like these teasers we talked about to check the temperature of the fans.
Right.
Just listen to us. Nobody wants to see George Clooney in the next Batman movie. Please. I didn't want to see him at the end of this movie. I wish it was just the Ben Affleck one that showed up.
Right.
The best idea I have for y'all is take the Ben Affleck Batman, now that this time, age thing don't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make him the Batman in the Brave of the Bold with the Batman family.
Sure. Make him a little older if that's the case.
Yep.
But definitely Ben Affleck.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's it, man. Any other thoughts on this movie?
I am trying not to think of this movie at all. It had, like I said, it had moments, and I appreciate those. It definitely, if you're not a Flash fan, die hard, definitely wait till it comes to Amazon or HBO or Disney or wherever it shows up. But it was a marginal movie at best. Do not believe the hype. Do not go running out, because you almost need to donate your liver just to go to the movies these days.
Yeah.
You're going to easily spend $60, $70
Right.
if you bring 2 people with you to watch this thing.
Yeah.
So if you go alone, so you don't have to mortgage your house. But if you don't have to go, wait at home for it. It'll show up next week. This is a directed DV kind of movie.
Yep. Love it. I'll say, I mean, for us, we predicted a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
Right. So not to pat ourselves on the back, but we said a few weeks ago that Flash is not a strong enough character in the DCU, not the comic character. Flash is amazing, but what we've been presented with, this Ezra Miller version of the Flash, is not a strong enough character to carry this multiverse reset. And I think we were proven right.
Absolutely.
We also said that the Michael Keaton Batman was going to be distracting when he's doing these acrobatics of a 22-year-old gymnast, and we were right about that.
Yep.
You threw a joke out there hoping they didn't bring back George Clooney. We were right about that.
Yep.
So basically, for your predictions moving forward, tune in to Only Comics. So to my man who asked why you should care about our opinions, that's exactly fucking why you should care about our opinions.
That's it. We got the goods over here.
Yeah, we got the goods. We are not experts. We are just fans who've loved comics since as long as we can remember. And we get together here once a week to discuss comics and Only Comics. So we will be back next week.
Yep.
Same time, same channel. Please hit the subscribe button. Let us know your thoughts, feedback. But we appreciate all the support. Adrian, thanks for coming in, dude.
Thanks, man. Always glad to be here.
Absolutely. This was a fun episode. I knew it's funny, like the shittier movies, I think, give us, the more entertaining episodes. So.
Well, they're more entertaining to talk about because you can
Yes.
slice and dice them. The Miles Morales Spider-Man is just so awesome.
Right.
It's just like you just want to just bathe in it for a couple of months,
Yeah, absolutely.
But this, you just want to, put it in a shoebox
Yeah.
and bury it somewhere as quickly as possible.
So if you're not us and you don't have to review review the movies for a podcast and you're thinking, should I go see, Spider-Verse again or go watch The Flash? Go watch the Spider-Verse movie again.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, that's it for this week. Guys, thanks for watching, downloading. Adrian, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week on Only Comics.
See you.